Kaka'ako Makai, a place for future generations. I just wanted to start today by kind of reviewing what Oha's kuleana is to Kaka'ako Makai. All of us know that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is a quasi-state agency that has a kuleana to Native Hawaiians, and specifically at Kaka'ako Makai, Oha has a fiduciary responsibility to generate income from its lands, to support Native Hawaiian programs and improve the well-being of Native Hawaiians. It also has a kuleana to make sure that they develop and manage the lands in a way that's consistent with their mission and vision, which a core component is Native Hawaiian well-being. And also to recognize that this is the first commercial lands that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is managing, and it really is the opportunity to start to enhance and invigorate the grants and services and programs that OHA offers throughout the state of Hawaii. So a little bit of background. Trustee Lindsay shared an overview of you already on the 2012 settlement. But just to reiterate, in 2012, the state of Hawaii settled with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and approved the transfer of 9, actually 10 parcels, but 2 are considered kind of one parcel, the piano lot, and transferred 9 parcels in Kaka'ako Makai to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs in lieu of $200 million of back rent owed to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. During this time, prior to the approval of the settlement, OHA went out into the community and did statewide community meetings with its beneficiaries and a larger community. And it was a really successful engagement process that allowed for the settlement to pass through the legislature. So this is really the 3rd time we're coming back. And we're coming back because in that 2nd round, the community said, we support, majority, we support, but we want to be involved in the process. We want to be engaged in the management and the development plans for Kaka'ako Makai. So what has the Office of Hawaiian Affairs done since the settlement took place? The first thing the board did was create the Kaka'ako Makai policy, which ensured that that in developing the lands, it would really be driven the design and the decision-making process would really be driven in a very Hawaiian and very Native Hawaiian way. They also engaged in a framework plan with a local planning firm to come up with some of the core principles that would guide the future planning of their Kaka'ako Makai parcels. So as Trustee Hulu Lindsay mentioned, the first one is kipuka. And you see this beautiful ecological kipuka here. But we also know, right, as 21st century Hawaiians and urban Hawaiians that, kipuka might manifest itself in a building or in a space or in a district. So this notion of cultural vibrancy or kipuka. The second was halauola, and really looking at the well-being of Native Hawaiians, intellectually, spiritually, physically, and how to increase the capacity of the Native Hawaiian community. And the third one, live, work, play, which is actually a concept that's deeply rooted in Kaka'ako Makai. We know that the traditional lands of Ka'akau, Kukui, and Kukuluai'o were traditional fisheries where we had settlements and communities lived and people worked, lived and played in these communities. The third thing that OHA did was they built capacity within their agency to be a commercial real estate land manager, creating the commercial real estate land division, which Alan Cam and Miles are a part of, and preparing for this new kuleana. That leads us to today, the conceptual master plan. We're really excited to be a part of this process and at the opportunity, as Trustee said, to start to imagine what an urban Hawaiian place looks like in the 21st century. So we know that we're talking about the 9 parcels, right, from the old Fisherman's Wharf all the way out to the point. And then across the way, across the waterfront park, we have the 2 parcels on the Honolulu side. And just for context, Ala Moana Boulevard. And we're in the center now. The conceptual master planning process is a process that's going to take 2 years, and it's basically to study what OHA can do with its parcels in order to meet its mission and vision. So we'll be studying design, land use, revenue generation, planning, timeline, development processes, as well as undergoing community engagement. So this is the first, and we'll be back as part of this conceptual master planning process. One of the tasks that OHA gave us in this conceptual master planning process was to start to think about where the video left off. What is the apex of commerce and culture at its highest level? Where do those things meet? How do they complement each other? How do you plan something for commercial use that is still very grounded in cultural concepts, and vice versa? So, you know, some of these are some of my favorite places that integrate culture and commerce. The High Line in New York City, right, incorporates the history of the rail system in its elevated park now, which has become a major visitor attraction, as well as a space for local communities to traverse amongst New York in a very different way. And really, when we talk about cultural development, we're talking about 4 different ways of engaging culture. So not only in programming, which we're really good at programming. We do a lot of Native Hawaiian programming, whether it's with land or education or health, but we can also do it in our architecture and our design. We can do it with dedicated facilities. We can create entire districts, like we see around the globe, that become these cultural districts that are for commercial uses, but very much grounded in the history and the culture of that space. So again, how do we integrate commerce and culture? So this next segment is really starting to get your juices flowing about what are the places we know that do this really well, that we might have visited, that we may like to visit, and then what are the assets? What do we know about Kaka'ako Makai and the things that existed here for hundreds of years? And then how do we marry those to create an urban setting, an urban space that's very much driven by Native Hawaiian ways of knowing, Native Hawaiian epistemology, but that attract the globe, really, to come and to be a part of this community. One way, we've seen this happen in the world, is garden attractions, right? Singapore, probably the most written about recently, the Singapore Gardens, which is also along the waterfront, as well as the Chihuli Gardens in Seattle. That creates, in urban settings, these dynamic garden spaces. You also we see regional science and natural history facilities. The California Academy of the Science in San Francisco, for example, doesn't only talk about what's in a rainforest or what plants are in a rainforest, but you walk through the rainforest as part of your experience, as part of learning, that innovation that's integrated into the programming and the design of that facility. We see arts and cultural centers, right? We have one of our own in Maui, the Maui Arts and Cultural Center, that's really become an icon in the Pacific. You know, large musicians and bands are booking their concerts here because of the venue, not necessarily in Honolulu, but on Maui. We also see visitor and interpretive centers. You know, these exist. One that I think is really relevant in Pili to Kaka'ako Makai is the Freedom Trail in Boston, because it's really about the connectivity that exists in between the spaces and how to traverse back and forth into this cultural district. Is that something that we can see happening in Kaka'ako Makai? Places of memory have also become very popular. The 9/11 World Trade Center Museum and Memorial, probably the most famous. But these are major destinations within cities. They're refuges within cities that attract visitors and locals alike to come and visit. Living history centers, I don't know if that would work here, but this is a literal translation of what historically we might see there. So would we see a fishery reemerge itself in Kaka'ako Makai? I don't know. Observation decks, I mean, every major metropolitan city has one, the Eiffel Tower. We see the Space Needle in Seattle. And one of the most dynamic ways is integrating technology into culture. So we see this with the Smithsonian as well as the National Geographic, but probably the most interesting one is the flyover Canada and Vancouver. Has anybody done it? Me neither, but it's supposed to be amazing. But it takes you all throughout, traverses all the spaces throughout Canada, goes through their culture and their history, right in the center of Vancouver. So I just want to close on that, on this note, and I want to challenge you to start to think about this. And this will be the task for the next hour. And it's an important task because we all have kuleana here. You're in this room right now because you have some kind of kuleana to Kaka'ako Makai. Whether you're a beneficiary or you're a community member, there's some reason for you to be in this room right now. So this is a time when you start to think about what that kuleana is and how we hapai that kuleana, keeping in mind, of course, OHA's mission and vision. But what is the apex of commerce and culture for Kaka'ako Makai? So we're going to move into our discussion portion, and I'm going to kind of play time cop up here.